For the next few days, it's Team Blue versus Team White as Lane Lambert gets ready to set the roster for Season 5 of your Seattle Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're bringing your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, been with you since the very beginning. Also an accredited media member for Milano Cortina. Heard from Oscar Fisker-Molgaard yesterday, who is an Olympic hopeful. We know Philip Grubauer is headed there, so I'm excited to bring you content and coverage from the Olympics, so you can hear from your favorite Kraken players. Also, a contributor over at CBS Sports, where we're hoping to do a little more women's hockey in particular. But I want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Now, you can head over to want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can head over to the FanDuel app now by visiting, or you can download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com, and you can win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But right now, we're going to talk about Team Blue versus Team White. I've mentioned this a few times in the last week or so, that we would get the training camp roster split into two groups. Those groups will have offsetting training times, practice times. We'll get into that. And for the rest of the week, either on social media or on the podcast, you'll hear me refer to Team Blue, Team White, and I'm going to tell you the rosters that we have for both of those squads. We're going to break those rosters down, and then I'm going to break the schedule down so that you are ready to go for the rest of training camp. We'll break it down for the next few days, the rest of this week. And again, you can follow us on social media. We have graphics for you that'll break everything down. And also, we'll have content categorized by day if you want to follow that way. All right. The Seattle Kraken, it was an off day for media members, as those who work outside of the team, we didn't have access to Media Day, which actually started yesterday. Again, if you were on Locked On Kraken social media, you saw a little sneak peek of something that looked like some kind of sea vessel or something. And so I know the content team is hard at work. I ran into a few of those, some that I've known over the years, some that I'm meeting for the first time. I know I mentioned at the back end of last year that a good friend of mine from women's hockey, we knew each other in the women's hockey space, now working for the Seattle Kraken. And I can't wait to catch up with Ann and everybody else. But Media Day, as far as the content that we're going to see when it's in arena at Climate Pledge Arena, or some of the things that you'll see on social media, a lot of that is batched content that happens and is collected in the days leading into training camp. So that was a little bit yesterday, some today, and tomorrow is the first day for us media, but it's also the first on ice sessions. And so we're going to talk about Team Blue first. And I have a handy dandy graphic for you, which we will also circulate on social media. But here is the roster for Team Blue. For those watching on YouTube, I'll make the graphic bigger for you. If you're not on YouTube, don't worry, I'm going to break it down. So we'll start with the forwards listed as Newman, Beniers, and Kakko, Schwartz, Wright, and Furcus, Shala, Molgaard, and Hayden, Reinkampf, O'Brien, Stevens, Villeneuve, Morrison, and Janicki. When it comes to defense for the blue team, Lindgren, Tolvanen, Evans, Alexiak, Olofsson, and Dragicevic, Jugnauth, and Hamill. And for our goaltenders, we have Grubauer, Murray, and LaFontaine. I also want to mention, before I break down and give you my thoughts on Team Blue, that it was also noted that Max McCormick, our captain for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, He is out indefinitely dealing with a hip injury, and Brandon Montour will be out with after handling a bursa on his ankle. So he's expected to be out and for the next 2 weeks. Technically, they said he will return in 2 weeks. So we'll keep an eye on that. When I look at this, the top line intrigues me because Beniers and Kakko, I like that duo together. And Newman, I think, especially given how he has slimmed down but also bulked up muscularly, I think that this can be really interesting for Beniers. I'm curious how Beniers is going to come to camp. Unlike Shane Wright, who I think has definitely been able to beef up a little, gain some muscle weight. Beniers, I think, has had a little bit of, it's been a little bit of a slower process for him to put on the weight probably that he wants. So I'm curious to see how he comes into camp this season. Schwartz, Wright, and Furcus. That's two NHLers with Furcus. So that's the first two lines are two NHLers outright, and then someone maybe, who is fighting for a spot or maybe a call up at some point in time. I like Furcus with Wright. They have some familiarity just being with each other throughout the pipeline. And Schwartz there to anchor things. I'm curious what Furcus can do as far as we know that Schwartz, his game for the Kraken has been very much about net front. So Furcus with Wright, when it was Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand and Wright, they had a lot of great net front presence. They had a lot of things that they were able to coordinate as a line. And so I think Schwartz and Furcus with Wright, I'm curious to see if some of that creativity comes into play. Now, Ayala, Molgaard, and Hayden. Hayden has the most NHL experience here, hard-nosed guy. Molgaard has good height. I talked about him yesterday. If you missed yesterday's episode, exclusive interview with Oscar Molgaard. We had a great time. He's a fun guy to talk to, very polite, very thoughtful, a Denmark hopeful for the Olympics. And I like his size there. And Ayala, also good height, someone who I think has had a mixed bag when it comes to his first chances in the AHL, and someone who I think still has something to prove with regard to if and when he can be NHL ready. Then you have Reinkampf, O'Brien, and Stevens. Stevens, of course, has some NHL experience there. O'Brien and Reinkampf, more of the fresh meat, so to speak, or the new threats. O'Brien, of course, our top draft pick from the most recent draft. Villeneuve, Morrison, and Janicki. Talked about Villeneuve not yesterday, but I guess 2 episodes ago, Monday, I guess that would be. And, very intrigued by what he can bring. On the defensive side, Lindgren and Tolvanen. Tolvanen has great size, a young guy I'm really excited to see. Evans and Alec. Familiarity there. I am very curious how Riker Evans is going to come into camp. I thought it was a little bit of a mixed bag on the back end of last NHL season. He had some, some resets that were imposed on him last year. So I'm curious how he comes in. Olofsson, also good size. Dragicevic, someone that I've talked about before. I believe he's one of the guys from Sound of Hockey that we want to keep a keen eye on. Jugnoth and Hamill, a little sandpaper. I'm looking for the sandpaper guys. And I think this defensive pairing or these defensive pairings give you a really good combination of size with a little sandpaper here. Then you have Grubauer, Murray, and LaFontaine. I've mentioned before, I really got a soft spot for LaFontaine. Talked to him a few times with Kansas City. That's our ECHL team that comes through Tulsa, which of course is where I'm headquartered with my company, Black Rosy Media, at least for now, until I get to Seattle, wink, wink. Murray, of course, brought on board this season, and Philip Grubauer. I'm very curious to see how Grubauer engages with this new coaching staff. Last year, I just didn't like how things were handled, if I'm being honest. I've never been all hands on deck or, a card-carrying member of the German gentleman fan club. That not because I don't think he's a great human being. He seems to be a really great human being, lovely to talk to. It just has been difficult. There have been so many times where this team has not performed well in front of Grubauer, overexerted him, and then we had the exact opposite last season. Understandable to an extent, but I think anyway, we've talked about that a lot on the show in the past. Want good things for Philipp Grubauer, and is his contract and how he's performed throughout his contract a liability for the Seattle Kraken? I know some people have very strong opinions one way or the other. I can accept the rationale from both quote unquote sides, and I think I'm somewhere in the middle. So I'm very curious how Grubauer comes in to camp, and he's someone I hope to talk to one-on-one, especially as I think of my Olympic coverage. So stay tuned with us. But coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Kraken, I'm going to break down the second group and who are some players that I'm looking to watch. What are some combinations that I think could be interesting? And we'll give you the schedule, what to expect for the rest of the week. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. This episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, etc. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface. And you can use it on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So thank you. I am the target audience. If you put off organizing your finances, I feel read by this ad read. Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes. You can see clear data visuals and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Thank you, Monarch Money. Thank you. I've been using Monarch Money for a while. I've talked to you before about the data visuals, the snapshots, the dashboards. The cash flow dashboard is huge for me as I'm thinking about bringing on other content creators such as Joe. We've had Ava come on board in some capacities and hope to have it expand as the Locked On Kraken show, of course, is a part of our larger Black Rosie Media contracts and enterprises. And so you don't want to let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. And so trying Monarch Money might work for you just as it's worked for me. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. As always, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. We appreciate our everydayers who make us your first listen of the day, your midday listen, your late night listen, especially those who are subscribed already. If you're not, now's a great chance to subscribe on our YouTube channel, wherever you listen on audio platforms. And don't forget to follow and engage with us on social media. Our TikTok fan base is growing a lot. We're getting back on Instagram and Facebook, and I think even Twitter. I still call it Twitter, but that's where Joe Dabney has been huge in helping us. You've probably seen we're recycling some of the clips that we've used on the long show, not just of me and my talking points, but of some of the interviews that we either collect from us exclusively or that are offered through the shared media portal, and that's all Joe. So we have stuff coming for you every single day. We talked about Team Blue. Now it's time to talk about Team White. And these groups are broken up for practice timing. I think it's for line combinations, testing certain things out. And then, of course, also once we get to the preseason games, for the most part, we'll see things broken down between Team Blue and Team White. And the teams may change and we'll keep you updated. But for now, when it comes to how these teams are structured, here is Team White. All right. We have Marchment, Stevenson, and Tolvanen. Marchment is the new guy here, but probably, especially thinking of forwards, probably the player that we got in the offseason that people are most excited about, that a lot of analysts expect will help guide the Lane Lambert era into how they want to play, net front presence, taking care of the puck, of course, on special teams, both penalty kill and power play. Just generally, the Seattle Kraken want to do that. And so Marchment is supposed to be a great fixture when it comes to some of those things. I talked about how I liked when Tolvanen was with Wright and Bjorkstrand. So him with Marchment, who has good height and can really get scrappy. That's one of the things our friends over at the Dallas show told us about, or maybe warned us about when it comes to Marchment. And so Tolvanen can play that game, but to allow Marchment and Stevenson perhaps to set him up a little bit more, I'm intrigued to see how that works. Or is this in the effort of getting Stevenson and Tolvi a little more sandpaper on their line? I guess we'll see. McCann with Catton and Eberle. And, McCann and Eberle, I like when we see the three J's or two of the three J's together. And Catton with his speed, I think this is a great way for him to test his mettle, if you will, with some heavy-duty NHLers. Cartier with Gaudreau and Melanson. Melanson is an interesting guy. I'm very excited to see how things work for him in training camp. Same with Ty Cartier. I think he's got a lot to prove, especially with some of these new threats that are coming into play. And can Carts keep an NHL roster? Like, can he start the season in the NHL? I think that's a question going in. Goyette is someone we've talked about in the last few days alongside Myers and Winterton. I think all of these guys, they come from a little bit of a mixed bag in that their journeys are a little bit different, but I do think that they all fit into this category of players that either are now or can be in the future a part of the group that is kind of that first. They get the first look if and when the Seattle Kraken need to call some folks up. I think it's time for Winterton to really step into that role. And so I'm curious to see how he is going to play with this team. Then you've got McKinnon, Loshko, and Avon. On defense, Vince Dunn and Adam Larson. Seeing Dunn, presumably what we hope is healthy coming into training camp. I really like that. No need to break those two up. We've seen it tried in the past. And I think everyone's happier when these two are happy together. I love their dynamic duo, Mahura and Fleury there, Price, Nelson. Really interested to see how Nelson comes into camp, a guy that's been in the fold for a little bit here, and I think is going to be a main fixture in the AHL more than someone that we'll see at the NHL level. And then you got the younger guys in Fibger and Fiddler. The goaltenders, Joey Daccord, Nico Coco, and Victor Osman, who I got to call in his NCAA games. That was a lot of fun going back to that film. So yeah, that's my analysis. I just realized I wasn't on screen that whole time. Well, now I'm back, people. Okay, that's my breakdown of that's the second group. Team White there. And again, these breakdowns, they're going to change over time as some guys are excused from camp. The NHL crew and the scouts felt that they got what they needed, and so they'll get them ready for whatever their season is, whether it's juniors or AHL. And then, maybe it'll change depending on, what we see in action when it comes to some of the preseason games. Talking about that, we're going to run through the training camp schedule. And now that you know the rosters, and again, check out our social media because we'll post the graphics that I had on today's show, so you can always refer back to them. Team Blue and Team White, and if there are any changes, we'll let you know of those changes in detail on the show, and then of course on social media. But what I'm going to do next is break down the schedule because the players alternate. So if Team Blue, for example, is the first group, more than likely they're going to be the second group the next day. So I want to get into the groove, like Madonna once sang, just so you know, and you can plan accordingly if you're going to come to Kraken Community Iceplex for some of the open sessions. Of course, if you are a season ticket holder, you know there are some extra bonus things for you, but I will be at KCI. I've heard from some listeners and we're gonna try and meet up, but if you see me, please do say hi. There is a chance, especially with some of my CBS work with the WNBA playoffs, that I might have a microphone and a camera in my face. If you could maybe just wave and we'll chat later if you see me. Apologies in advance if that's the case. I promise I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm probably just live, either doing this show, excuse me, but more likely something live. If I'm doing this show, I don't mind saying hi, and I'll try to make eye contact. If I kind of am trying to not make eye contact and focus on the camera, that's probably when you can tell that I'm live. Just something that came up the other day, and I was like, oh no, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just that I'm on air right now. So apologies in advance for that. But please, please, please do come say hello. I enjoy meeting with you in the flesh. I am effectively talking to myself here. And so to get feedback, I feel like I'm like Lady Gaga or Tinkerbell, depending on what reference is best for you, but I live for the applause. You know, I love hearing from you. So please, please, please do interact. You also know I will take the criticism when there are times where I'm like, ooh, yeah, you called me out for that. I love it. There are other times where people cross the line and I will address that as well. If not only for myself, also because, you know, like I say, we have to be kind to ourselves, and a part of that is standing up for yourself, but being kind to others doesn't mean you can't check them every once in a while, okay? And also, like, if you're talking to me like that, I want to make sure you know there are consequences, because you shouldn't be talking to anyone like that or without expecting a clap back. Anyway, I know I go on my little soapboxes here. My soapbox, my rants, my random, pop culture references, although I did appreciate that in the comments, we have some other Prince of Egypt's. How many Egypts are there? Prince of Egypt fans playing with the big boys. That's what some of these new threats are going to be doing. They're playing with the big boys now. And that gets started in earnest tomorrow, Thursday. I can't wait. I will be there. If you're going to be at KCI, come say hi. Unless you see all the cameras and the stuff. And then I'll throw a deuce, and I'll throw up some deuces and talk to you at another time. All right, coming up next, what's that training camp schedule? Well, I'll tell you. And then we'll wrap up today's show of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready to kick it off with a can't wait and can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, a lot of people use FanDuel in so many different ways, including for player props. You know, I try to let you know about the futures bets, bets on game day, things like that, for a same game parlay. You can even jump in live as the action is unfolding. FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy, as my friend Ari Chambers might say, to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The full training camp is upon us, people. I'm doing my little dance here in my hotel room. I'm excited. This is like one of my favorite times of the year. It is also one of my busiest times of the year. It's when the NHL season is starting, WNBA is winding down, and then it's vice versa. Once we're in NHL playoffs, the WNBA season is ramping up. We've got March Madness, we've got the draft, we've got training camp, and I'm like, all of the things. And I wouldn't change it. I love it. I love my job. It is unpredictable, wild, crazy, exciting, heartbreaking. So many emotions that I've had covering sports. But that's what I love. It's the hard that makes it great. You know what I'm saying? And this is my way of living that. Didn't make it as a pro athlete myself, but I can certainly talk about them. All right. And speaking of that, let's talk about what to expect. So the schedule for tomorrow, it's going to be the blue group. Again, that's headlined by the Beniers line with Newman and Kakko. They're going to hit the ice. The goalies hit the ice at 8:55. So wake up, set your alarms. 8:55 to 9:15 a.m. That's going to be on rink 1. Then the practice will start at 9:15 on rink 2 and then move over to rink 1. So 9:15 is practice at rink 2, and then the practice moves to rink 1 at 9:45. And then us media folks will talk to the blue group, as the next group, the white group, will start at 11:10. So the goalies for the white group will hit the ice at 11:10 in rink 1. Then practice will start at 11:30 a.m. in rink 2 and then move to rink 1 at 12 noon. That's for Thursday, tomorrow. On Friday, the white group will start. So 8:55 for the goalies for the white group, and then the blue group starts at 11:10. Again, the white group headlined by the Stevenson line with Marchment and Tolvanen. So make sure you, if you haven't already, rewind. If you haven't already, snapshot the images or the rosters that we have there for you, blue group, white group, and we'll also have them on social media. If you need a refresher, we'll update those and we can post them every day because they might change. So just keep an eye on that, but we will post them as part of our social media content. So if you're not already following TikTok, we have things, of course, on YouTube, IG. I'm personally on Blue Sky, either at Black Rosie Media, like Rosie the Riveter, ROSIE, or eLindsay08. You can find me on Blue Sky. Joe will handle anything on the Twitter app. And so also just note that I've mentioned it a few times, just bear with us, especially on some of the other platforms, because Joe is away handling a personal matter. And we want to offer grace and space. So we'll get to all of that eventually, but Joe is still doing some work for us, just a little bit different than originally intended. So just bear with us there. But I'm excited. I have said it before. I got really ramped up. I didn't think I was going to get so excitable on yesterday's episode, but the words that Lane was saying resonated a lot with me. And if you listen, if you're an everydayer, if you're an OGer of the show, then you know I have been wanting this team to freaking open up their lungs. It seems as though the one time that happened at training camp under Dan Bylsma, the season was our second worst. So I don't know if there's a correlation causation there. I hope not. I want someone to write a book on what happened in season 4, because I'm still reeling and trying to understand. I think there are things that happened that were symptomatic of seasons prior and decisions made prior. And then there had to be some things, right, that were just a little funky going on with the Bylsma administration. I don't know. But anyway, what I want to see is a Kraken team committed to the basics, to the fundamentals, because it's something that I haven't really seen this team do. Now, there was some of that in season 2 where I think there was a decision made to simplify the game because that's what the roster could provide, right? Lessons learned from the inaugural season, and you hunker down in certain ways. And you can say a lot about Dave Haxtell, but I think that he understood that and that he demanded that in certain ways. And that was our most successful season. I know in our YouTube comments for sure, people have compared that maybe the way this season 5 roster is being built, it's in service of trying to be more like that season 2 roster. I think that's really interesting. And as we get moving, I want to do a deep dive like we've done with the expansion draft. Where are they now? Inaugural season, where are they now? And season 2, I want to do the same. Obviously, there's some overlap in all 3 of those categories, including 2 if we did a deep dive or when we get our roster for season 5. But there are also some players like Martin Jones, Ryan Donato, Morgan Geekie that I really want to get into how they impacted this roster. And season 2, it's all about Martin Jones. I might spend all of my Where Are They Now talking about Jones, his impact in season 2 unmatched. But anyway, now you have the schedule, you have the rosters, blue group, white group. You know where to find it on the Locked On Kraken social media. We'll post it every single day, so there shouldn't be any opportunity for you to miss it. You can screenshot that. You can share it. Please do share it with other people. Hopefully that's a resource and a tool, not just for me to keep my brain organized, but that also helps you. All right, that's our show. Tomorrow I will be at KCI, and I'm super excited for that. We'll have a show that will come probably afternoon local time because I'm going to see my favorite band in the world, Haim, play at WAMU Theater. Never been to WAMU Theater. I have only seen one concert here in Seattle. I've seen Haim in multiple cities, multiple times, sometimes in the same city. And I've seen them when they were openers, and now they're headliners and selling out Madison Square Garden. I don't know if WAMU is sold out. Also saw Disclosure is playing the next night. Like, I might have to hop on Game Time and see if I can get me some tickets. I'm trying to let my hair out, sweat it out. I love a good dance sesh. Anyway, so tomorrow, Thursday schedule will be a little bit different. Bear with me. At minimum, anything exclusive that I get from tomorrow's camp, I'll post that. And then we might have just a detailed run through a little bit later in the day, but we will have something up for you Friday, of course. And then we'll be going through the weekend. So if there's something that I want to give you an update on, hey, again, that's why you should subscribe, hit the notifications if you are watching on YouTube so you know when things post. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. Let's hold fast. We stay true. Loud and proud, we say, let's go Kraken and let's go Seattle Storm, baby. They have a chance to knock out a team that came into the playoffs on a 16-game winning streak, or 15 games, 15 or 16. A crazy winning streak. And they got a big-time win at CPA Climate Pledge Arena last night. I want to see if there's a little more magic left there. I do think there are going to be some changes coming for your Seattle Storm, and why not go out with a bang? But I'll keep you posted on that on my Black Rosie Media coverage and here from time to time. But if you want a deep dive analysis, head over to Black Rosie Media. Tempestagi Talk is our podcast, keeping a local eye on the Seattle Storm. I am Erica L. Ayala. Peace out, everybody. I'll catch you on the next episode.